you for coming to this very special event, the premiere of Techne, which you just saw, and a panel about revising the golden record, which we're going to do now. As Michael just introduced me, my name is Daniel Oberhaus. I am the author of Extraterrestrial Languages, which is a book about the art, science, and philosophy of interstellar communication. I will soon be joined on stage by three very esteemed panelists, but first I'd like to take a moment to set the stage for the discussion we're going to be having tonight. The scientific search for extraterrestrial intelligence, also known as SETI, started 63 years ago when the planetary astronomer Frank Drake trained the radio telescope at the Green Bank Observatory on a star system 11 light years from Earth. He spent the summer doing this, and although he didn't find any evidence of alien life during those 3 months, his experiment had a profound effect on the future of the search. Perhaps the most relevant for us tonight is Drake realized that if SETI were one day successful, and I think everyone here hopes it one day will be, we would immediately face a complex and urgent challenge, and that challenge is how to respond. At their core, all interstellar messages are efforts in identifying universals, and I mean that in the strongest sense of the term. We're looking for ideas and modes of communication that can be assumed to be shared, or at least recognized, by any intelligent species in the galaxy. So before we bring up our panelists, I'd like to look at a few of our options. The first, and perhaps most obvious, is human language itself. It doesn't take much reflection to realize that this is probably a poor mode of communication for contacting extraterrestrials. Human languages are burdened with significant ambiguity and are a product of our unique evolutionary and cultural history on Earth. We shouldn't, in short, expect aliens to speak English, French, or Mandarin. So if human language is out, how about mathematics and science? These have, in fact, been the heart of every extraterrestrial communique we've ever beamed into space. Over the past 50 years, we've sent depictions of DNA's double helix, numerals, chemical formulas, astronomical calculations, the lambda calculus, binary code, and our hope was that this might be recognizable to any extraterrestrial civilization that encounters it. And it is sound logic. As far as we know, the laws of physics are the same throughout the universe, and be understood by any species who is capable of receiving our communication in the first place. On the other hand, I don't think we should be so hasty to assume that extraterrestrials would recognize these apparent universals if they were to receive them. Because as it turns out, most humans can't either. Shortly after Drake did his Green Bank experiment, he designed an early prototype of the Arecibo message that you just saw in the film. And to test out this message, he sent it to dozens of leading scientists that were his friends and colleagues, including several Nobel laureates. Like the Arecibo message, Drake's missive was a simple bitmap coded as a binary string. It contained some basic mathematical and scientific formulas, and the people who received it probably understood those concepts better than the vast majority of people on Earth. And yet only a single person was even able to determine that the message was a bitmap. Everyone else, they didn't understand the contents of it at all. And this experiment has actually been replicated several times over the past 50 years with similarly dismal results. So I think that's a strong knock against our bias for mathematics and science in interstellar message. We certainly don't want to take them out completely, but we should maybe consider some other options. The idea that I would like to approach for you all tonight is that art may be an ideal method for interstellar communication. And when I say art, I'm talking about it in a very, very broad sense. I'm talking about it as a hybrid mode of communication and thinking about our human gestures and the provocations that they might illuminate for other intelligences. The challenge is that if we're going to communicate with extraterrestrials, we're going to be communicating with them as a species, rather than as individuals, nations, or cultures. This means we need to find a mode of communication that is shared by all humans. Every culture in history has had some kind of outlet for creative expression, and this ability to create and appreciate art actually seems to be a defining characteristic of our species. Some of you may object that art can't be a good mode of communication because its message is ambiguous, but this ambiguity might actually be one of the biggest votes in its favor. When an artist creates a work of art, they may have a specific message that they're trying to communicate, but they also are aware that their audience will have their own interpretations of that piece, and they may end up walking away with an entirely different message than the one the artist intended. The point of art is not necessarily to communicate a particular idea in an ambiguous fashion, but to forge a connection with the artist's audience. And the etymology of the word communicate has its roots in the Latin for to share. And at least for me, and I think several of our panelists, it's difficult to imagine a better way to share what it means to be human than our innate capacity for creating and producing and appreciating art. From this perspective, one could argue art and its many forms of media is the spine of our history as a species. It narrates to us from beyond the time we exist in, but also has the capability to shift and change meaning over time. The idea of using art as a framework for interstellar messaging isn't original to me, of course. The history of this project has been largely driven by artists who applied lateral thinking to deeply technical problems. If you go back to the 19th century, you'll find the astronomer Joseph von Littrow, who proposed digging massive trenches in the Sahara, filling them with kerosene, and lighting them on fire to send messages to the extraterrestrials he believed existed on the Moon and Mars. His contemporary Charles Crow had a similarly outlandish idea. He petitioned the French government to create a giant mirror that would be used to burn messages onto the surface of Mars as a mode of communication. For better or worse, although almost certainly for the better, none of those ideas came to fruition. But it would take several more decades before we actually had the technologies to reach out to an extraterrestrial. And by that point, we knew that we were alone in our solar system. Unsurprisingly, perhaps the artistic impulse has carried through into these modern extraterrestrial messaging attempts. And I think one of the most important ones is the one we're here to talk about tonight. The two gold-plated records that were carried on the Voyager spacecraft, which left Earth in 1977. These records were not just the first extraterrestrial message to include an artistic component, but they were also the first and to date only physical messages, extraterrestrial messages to leave our solar system. Each record was designed as an interstellar time capsule that captured what it was like to be human in the late 20th century. Embedded in their grooves is music from a staggering variety of genres, photos, and even some brainwaves from one of our panelists. The impact of the Voyager records on the design of subsequent interstellar messages has been truly profound. There have only been a few interstellar messaging efforts in history, but almost all of them, including the recent cosmic call transmissions and the sonar transmissions that were just sent a few years ago, have included substantial artistic elements. Voyager records were certainly influential, but since they left Earth in 1977, no other extraterrestrial message quite like them has been sent into space. But as we'll learn tonight, that will soon change. My hope is that our conversation here tonight will inspire us to think about how the meaning of this original Voyager record project has shifted just in the past 50 years. This, I think, really underscores the challenge of what we're dealing with when we talk about interstellar communication. These are cosmic messages in a bottle that must communicate their message across unfathomably vast expanses of time and space. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our amazing panelists and call them to the stage. First up, we have Jiang, who probably needs no introduction for this audience. Anne is an Emmy Peabody Award-winning documentary writer, producer, and director, whose award includes the titles Cosmos and Compact. She is a best-selling novelist and nonfiction writer, and the creative director of NASA's Voyager Interstellar Message Project, which produced the Golden Records. She's also, as far as I know, the only person on this stage to have an asteroid named for her. As we speak, asteroid Jiang is in a perpetual wedding ring orbit around the sun with an asteroid named for her late husband, Carl Sagan. Welcome, Anne. Next up, we have Dr. Jonathan Jiang, who you just saw in the film. Dr. Jiang is a distinguished scientist and an esteemed figure in the academic community. Currently, he serves as a senior research scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a division of the California Institute of Technology. In addition, he holds the position of editor-in-chief for the Earth and Space Science Open Archive. He's the president of the Global Environmental Change section of the American Geophysical Union, as well as an elected fellow for the American Meteorological Society. Welcome, Jonathan. And last but certainly not least, we have Daniel R. Small. Daniel is a contemporary artist, filmmaker, and educator. His work engages with speculative pasts and futures through interventions in sites, narratives, and technologies. Thank you for assembling us all here tonight and for making that phenomenal film you just enjoyed. All right, so the first question is going to be for Jonathan. As we just saw in your film, the research suggests that there's actually a very high likelihood that intelligent extraterrestrial life is short-lived and prone to do self-annihilation. This, in many ways, adds a palpable sense of urgency to our interstellar messaging efforts because our transmission window, and perhaps the window for extraterrestrial civilizations who might receive these messages, might be quite small. So as we're coming up now on the 50th anniversary of the Voyager Golden Record, the time seems to be right for another project of comparable vision and scope. And from what I understand, you've actually spent the past few years working on such a project. So I would love for you to tell us tonight about what you've been up to.
Okay, thank you very much. And actually, since the 40th anniversary of Voyager launch, there's a number of things happen, and which promote us, triggered us to take actions, and to launch this project of interstellar messaging effort. Now, first of all, I remember in 2018 when Steve Hawking passed away, he asked us to look up to the stars. At the same time, he left a warning message. It says humanity may only have a few hundred years left, because the dangers we're facing today, such as climate change, maybe nuclear war, maybe even artificial intelligence. So that triggered us to conduct a study showed in the Techne. We did a computer simulation all the way from galaxy formation, star formation to the angiogenesis, and try to find out if there's a life in the galaxy, where and how long they can survive. Now, on the cosmic scales, and the formation of the galaxy, the life cycle of the stars takes billions of years. And even the planets like the Earth was formed 4.5 billion years ago. And life emerges on the Earth about 3.5 billion years ago. But most of the time it's bacteria. And the humans and our civilization exists on Earth, as Carl Sagan said, only a fraction of a second on the cosmic calendars. So that's why the action we took today determines how long we can survive. On the simulation, we actually tested if our self-destruction rate, if it's greater than 0.1%. Essentially, if you do these simulations, the entire galaxy, actually nobody's older than us. So that is promote our thinking. We did this in 2019, essentially. We published paper a year later. Now in 2020, COVID pandemic happens. So that's why you see in the field, I have a long beard because it's pandemic. Now, lucky enough, the death rate is low, it's below 1%. But in the history, we used to have a pandemic, the death rate is high. Fortunately, during that time, we don't have air travel, so it's localized. Now we have air travel. Think about the next pandemic, if death rate is high, then we are in trouble. So that's 2020, it lasts quite a few years. Then the following year in 2021, and James Hansen of Gates Center, they published a paper. They found the global warming is accelerating. If you analyze the curve, it's an acceleration curve. And soon after that, there's a paper published on Science. It says the 1.5 degrees Celsius, you're going to trigger the tipping point. So far, we have the global warming is 1.1 degrees already. And after that, my student, and Nicole actually helped me to conduct a study. We found in the next 20 years to 50 years, we are going to cross the tipping point. So that's from the best climate model simulation we can have. And one more thing that triggers, I remember in 2020 in March, Nick Serra from Interstellar Foundation, he called me, he said he wanted to discuss about updating golden record, because a week ago, he said, the war between Russia and Ukraine broke up. And so there's one side even say, they're going to use nuclear weapons if necessary. So this is really something and happened. So last year during the Christmas break, 4 days, I just read the paper up. It's called Message in the Bottle, because we think we need a powerful education tools to wake people up, to let us think who we are. If we communicate with the whatever in the galaxy, how to represent human civilizations in the galaxy. So this is a project, so I'm announcing today, we actually launched this project to update the golden record, to create a message in the bottle for the cosmic ocean.
That's incredibly exciting. So I have a lot of follow-up questions for that, but we'll move down the line here and circle back to it, because that is just a truly incredible project, and it's also very timely one given all these kind of cataclysmic events that have been seem to pop up every passing year. And you were the creative director for the original Golden Records, and they contained a very staggering variety of media. There were audio recordings of volcanoes, there was a tractor in there was laughter, speech in so many dialects, say a mother kissing its baby or their baby. And I would love to know how you approached picking what was going to go on that record when you were thinking about communicating for an entire planet. How did you go about that?
Well, it was labor of love. There were some 60,000 nuclear weapons on air trigger. So the entire planet was in a kind of hostage crisis. And here we were, only 20 years after the launch of Sputnik, the first object we had ever been able to launch into space. 20 years later, we were beginning the reconnaissance of the outer solar system and an interstellar message with a projected shelf life of 1 to 5 billion years. And we felt very much alive in that spring of 1977. We were very cognizant of the magnificent tapestry of the world's cultures. And we didn't want these precious things, bird song, cricket song, the music of some 27 distinct musical traditions. We didn't want those things to die with us. We wanted to convey something of the joy of being alive on this planet, the richness of its natural life, as well as the achievements of a very young human civilization in the throes of its adolescence, and feeling that we had survived our own adolescence, which was perilous, dangerous, and filled with a sense of imminent destruction. That we wanted to keep this, what humans and the other creatures with whom we share this planet, we wanted them to live. This was a time before there was even a concept of world music. And I think it's a tribute to JPL and to NASA that in giving us this opportunity to create a Noah's Ark of human culture, that they didn't ask us to simply aggrandize and commemorate the builders of the spacecraft, the Americans, but instead allowed us to create as comprehensive a portrait is to be human as we possibly could. And so the sound essay, for instance, is a kind of, it's a story. We're a story-driven species. And what I wanted to do with the sound essay was to tell something of the history of the planet to the best of my limited abilities, going back, excuse me, to the early geological epochs, into the evolution of life and the evolution of human culture. And we try to do that using the microphone as a kind of camera to tell that story. And my brainwaves, yes, are on that record. But that was an hour's meditation, not just about the glory of love, but also in my own way, telling the story of our planet and our species, and just allowing myself at the end of that hour to ruminate on what it is to love a parent, a child, a friend, another adult. And so that was the story that we were trying to tell. And I still, 46 years later, I still can't wrap my head around the wonder of it. The wonder that I was given this opportunity to convey my feelings and my thoughts to the impossibly distant future and potentially to spacefaring extraterrestrials of perhaps 1 or 2 or 5 billion years from now.
Daniel, a core theme of Techne is this idea that a core theme of the film you just saw is this idea that our material and natural environment carries traces with us sometimes, for millennia. And I was wondering how we might use this profound idea that you explored in this film as we consider what it means to try to build on Anne's incredible legacy here and her collaborators with the Golden Record. How can we use these ideas you explored in the film to think about how we might do that today?
Sure. Yeah, the materiality, I mean, what I explored in Techne is really, it is the kind of materiality of creator and destroyer of worlds. I think in the context of this conversation tonight, something I've thought a lot about in preparation for thinking about this project and for Techne as well is an idea that Nietzsche put forth, which is this kind of idea of eternal return or eternal recurrence, or the idea that the universe would just kind of infinitely loop, or just continuously, like everything we're saying now would happen again. And it's a terribly depressing idea. But I think there's a kind of variation on that, which, at least from my knowledge, is, I guess, mathematically possible. The idea that while it may not just recur infinitely, that it could be possible that, say, humans somewhere way down the line, say billions of years from now, would recur again. Or it's this idea of the what people refer to as this kind of like apple in a box idea of, like, if you put an object in a box and it went through every state that it possibly could, that, say, billions of years from now, there would be another apple in that box. So, like, the implication is that, of course, like, well, if that would occur, then we would too. And I think there's something really intriguing about the idea that, say, Anne's project or this new effort, that in some distant future that maybe there'll be another version of us that may receive or have some knowledge of a different version of us that, or maybe we're already that version, which is such a weird and kind of interesting idea that folds back on itself.
Yeah, it's a beautiful and kind of hard to wrap your head around idea. We're talking on time scales that it's very difficult to contemplate when you only exist for 80 years on this planet. And kind of along that vein, you know, in the film, Ebru Kerbach, she discusses this idea of the cone of possibility and kind of emphasizes how the only way that we can kind of understand our preferred future is to understand what is truly possible, or maybe what is limiting us. And I think what's so compelling about that idea is that it requires us to step out of normal frames of thinking and these, I guess, just boxes that we try to fit the world into. And I think this is really relevant to the context of extraterrestrial communication and designing these messages that maybe for another civilization, maybe for our own, or maybe for someone in the deep, deep future on Earth. And so this is a question for the group. We can go in the same order that we just did, but I would love to get your thoughts on how we can learn to unsee these very human-centered perspectives. We tend to group things in ways that might not be shared by others. So how do we step outside of that and kind of adopt a alien mindset?
Okay, and in my view, this is a research project. The best way to thinking of that is, suppose if we receive a message, how do we understand it? At the beginning, we may don't know, okay? You need some time to decode, to understand it. But on the other hand, from our purposes, and I view this as it's not only communicate with the aliens, but we communicate with the future. Let me tell you, we have three objectives. The first objective is same as the golden record is for extraterrestrial communications. We are going to send this message in this interstellar probe, go out solar system, maybe millions of years in the future, was intercepted by somebody. But we have differences with the old approach. So for example, we try the layer tier approach. The first layer is we imagine if the spacecraft crash landed on the planet, and there's creatures, but they don't have advanced technology. They live in a time, for example, like ancient Rome. Okay? So the only thing they can understand is pictures, drawings. Okay? So the first tier we are going to design this message, the Silk Road of hundreds of pictures drawing to represent human societies. The second tier, of course, we design a message as imagine spacecraft was intercepted by advanced and technological capable beings. Okay, and so they're going to decode images, videos, and so on. So this is objective one. Objective two is we want to use this as a global education tool. Okay? If we communicate with civilizations, we are not representing as one institute, okay? As even one country, we are representing the human civilizations on the earth, okay, all citizens. So what we should do as thinking, we use this as education to encourage the young people's thinking. Is the second objective. The third objective, after we create this message, we want to deal with a library, for example. We buried in the library underground for thousands of years. 1,000 years later, our grandchildren's children open it. Wow, that's a message. And from our ancestors, we are the ancestors. What do we say? What do we say to the future generation? So this is, we creating a message both in space and time to the future. So this is what we try to do. And so I stop here, maybe you can answer the other aspect.
Well, I'm often asked what I said now, and I really feel that we gave it everything we had back in 1977, and so it's for other younger people to create new messages. But if I was sending a message right now, I would send the entire World Wide Web. I would not curate, because curation is a bit of a lie. What we tried one Voyager was to put our best foot forward. We didn't want to, show Hiroshima. We didn't want to show Auschwitz, the Belgian Congo. We didn't want to show unto your eye. And so what I would do, I would say that we're sending it on a spacecraft, and we're expecting, because space is so largely empty, we're not expecting our spacecraft to encounter any other planets or moons or worlds. So it's necessarily a spacefaring civilization that has found our message. And if they're smart enough to be able to traverse enormous distances between the stars, they figured all that out, then they will know so much about us from the spacecraft itself. It will tell them that we're sort of a grade F young civilization that's just beginning to try our hand at space travel. And so the message itself is simply an added bonus. And I would send the good, the bad, the horrible, the ugly, the beautiful that we are, because to do otherwise would be less than truthful.
I agree. It feels like if it becomes too highly curated or it becomes too kind of pinned down in that way, it feels more like we're sending a social media post, to into interstellar space. So yeah, I would agree that I think in this new project, having some version of something that feels radically open would be so intriguing, where it didn't feel maybe like it was just like a taxonomic system that we have imposed on something, or that it is so highly curated that it just becomes a hallucination of ours,
So I wanted to make sure we leave time for questions. If anyone in the audience is interested in asking the panelists questions, we actually have 2 microphones up here in the aisles. And so while you're getting in line for that, I'll do 2 more quick ones for Anne and Jonathan. And there's a really famous line in Cosmos in the opening of the series about, where Carl Sagan says, the cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself. It's one of my favorite series and one of my favorite lines from the series. And I know you have a deep interest in pre-Socratic philosophy. And I would love to just kind of hear like the connection between this idea in the show and your interest in this kind of oneness, and how does bridge the gap between what you do creatively and outer space.
Well, Daniel, you've picked my favorite line in Cosmos too, written by Carl Sagan and Stephen Soder and myself. And that line, we are a way for the cosmos to know itself. I believe that was Carl's line, and when I first encountered it, I don't know if he said it to me or I read it on the page, but it was suddenly, it was a revelation. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. Wow, well, and when I was a kid, I was learning in school about outer space, as if this world was a place apart, a very pre-Copernican view that I think still, is still prevalent. And to know, as Carl taught the whole world, that every part of ourselves, the atoms in every part of us, were cooked in the hearts wanted to know, when did people first stop resorting to explain everything as the work of the gods? And that took me to pre-Socratic philosophers, and I fell in love with them, to Heraclitus, who said, "Not I, but the world says it, all is one." To Democritus, who intuited atomic theory. How did he do that? That's just so amazing. I could never get over that. And to Hippocrates, who said that we think of epilepsy as a sacred disease because we don't understand what causes epilepsy. And one day we will. And as soon as we do, we'll no longer think it divine. This was a revolution, a liberation, a breaking of shackles, the first thought steps on the way to the stars. And without it, without these merchants, middle class, people who happen to live at the crossroads of the world of that time, without their ability to dispense with these codes for our ignorance, and to look more deeply at the simplest questions about water and apples and things that everyone takes for granted, and to ask the questions that children ask, but that they are punished for by adults who feel incompetent to answer those questions. And in that way, we squelched a whole species of natural scientists from looking more deeply at the magnificence of nature. So for me, that was the turning point in my life, and that's what attracted me to science.
All right, so we'll do one last quick one for Jonathan, and then we'll open it up to the floor here, because there's a lot of questions. Jonathan, the question was if people want to learn more about the Message of the Apollo project that you're doing with the Interstellar Foundation, we're going to learn more about kind of the next steps that we're taking here.
Okay, so let me follow up a little bit about answer to question. Carl said that we are the way to know the universe, and because we are intelligent. I remember when I was in Canada, and I used to have a dog. His name is Peaches. One day I was thinking, hey, the dog is smart, okay? But no matter how hard we teach him, he will never understand the moon moves around the earth, earth moves around the sun, because the spring power is limited. We are intelligent. I think in the universe, we have already discovered, NASA already discovered more than 5,000 exoplanets. 5% of those exoplanets is in the Hubble zone based on our studies. So that means the temperature is correct, the water is there. Suppose our understanding of physics applies anywhere in the galaxy, there's probability life can arise. Okay. But still, the intelligence is precious. The most life on the planet, maybe forests and trees and grass and birds and insects, passing the day without knowing their own existence. So there's intelligence is precious. So, okay, go back to your question. We designed this message because we want to use this as an education tool. We want to serve the human civilization in the galaxy. We want to be the beacon of hope in the cosmos. Because we want to survive. We want to move forward. And it's very hard to get people's attention, so we use this activity as sort of tools, okay, to wake people up to see who we are. Okay. Now, there's no solid timeline for that. We are going to do it in the next few years. We are going to take diverse input from people from all over the world, different background, and so to construct these messages. And another thing is we try hard to convince NASA to support us, which is very hard. Okay. And we are going to do it anyway because we have grassroots support for that. Finally, I want to say, 2 years ago, there's a NASA rover landed on Mars. Okay, that rover took a picture of the Earth. It's a tiny dot surrounded by darkness. If you look at this, I'm thinking, based on our current understanding of physics, our technology, we are not reaching for the stars. We are trapped on this tiny dot with limited resources. This is who we are now. And scientifically, whether or not there's aliens, we don't know yet. Maybe we are alone in the universe, maybe we don't. But one thing for sure is, people say, hey, if that tiny dot taking off, the universe is still there. Like Carl Sagan said, nobody is there to understand this cosmos yet. So we want to survive. Survive does not mean tomorrow or next 100 years. Survive means millions of years into the future, so until we reach for the stars. So this is our aspiration for this message in the bottle project, is we are going to do it. Thank you.